to another episode of the Weekly Jad. My name is Lawrence of America. With me today is
Matt-tastic.
Kryptonite Kyle.
And the Supreme B-Man.
When did it become the Supreme B-Man
It's been like that
versus
for a while.
the Ultimate B-Man?
He changed that.
I changed it.
He leveled up.
I changed
He
it.
did. He is
leveled
now
up.
the
Crossed the
artist
border
formerly
and then
known as
came
the
back.
Ultimate B-Man.
So I had to change my name. I went up a level. That's what
Is
happened.
the Ultimate
I leveled
B-Man
up.
a zombie now?
Yeah,
And
he's a zombie right
you're
now. He's walking around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There can be only one, though, so he has to kill him and cut off his head.
All right, if you
Exactly.
find him. Okay.
Cut his head and stab him with a katana.
So, back on point, I believe we all remember
It's all good.
that I didn't care for the last episode
Nobody
because
did.
the way it was handled.
Yeah.
It was
I was blown away by this one. In comparison, I don't know if this was so good or because I was so disappointed by the other one, it made
Yeah.
it seem so much better.
Yeah.
But realistically, I thought they drew out the last one too much, and they packed so much into this one that they could have took maybe a third of this one and put it in the last episode and had two decent episodes.
Yeah.
yeah.
There's so many good moments, I feel, that are in this one that are set up that they could have used in the last episode as well. Even if it's just something really small. You know, like the Tyrese and Carol thing. Like, I
Right,
thought that was
right.
extremely touching. You know, like, you can see, like we were talking with Gomer earlier, and he was saying that you can really see it on her face when he comes up and he's so relieved to find that Carol's alive. He gives her this huge hug, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, you made it out? Where have you been? We're so glad to have you." And she's like, does he know? Like, that's the look on her face, you know?
And
He doesn't.
I think
doesn't,
that would
yeah,
have
absolutely.
been, they could
He
have
really
really pointed that out more if they put that section
Yeah.
in the
Oh, yeah,
part
that's what I'm
with
saying,
Rick
yeah.
in there.
Yeah.
That would have definitely been hammered home more.
Oh, definitely.
One thing I've definitely noticed in this season, they've definitely done more nods to where they've replicated a page or two out of the comic books.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas it seemed like they deliberately avoided that in the previous seasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think when they do it right, it's turning pretty good. The first episode, they did it wrong. This episode, I think they nailed one.
Yeah.
The introduction to the new characters,
Mhm. Yeah.
dead on. And even though, everything other than the introduction is weird, it's a different group of people meeting them, just how they introduce themselves, that little shot was a nice homage. So, and the appearance of the characters look dead on,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
agree with that, actually.
I basically, like I said in the last episode when we were talking, I don't think you need to come back guns blazing, but I thought this at least had a little bit more going on. Characters that I actually cared about, especially Glenn and Maggie. I was so glad to see that back. I've just been waiting for that.
Yeah.
And I do like who's broken off with who. I like that Daryl's with the younger sister, and I do like that Maggie and the drunk and Tyrese's
Yeah.
sister together. I kind of like
Sasha.
I love how they're, each group is kind of fighting for like, oh, well, we got to get back, even though they have their
Right.
own reasons for it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I was glad to
exactly.
see more of them.
And
Right.
but also though in like each group, which I think is really amazing, is that you see a character in each of these groups go, no, other people made it. It's okay. We can all get back together.
Right.
And then there's one that's like, no, everyone's dead. We're pretty much it. Like,
Yeah.
don't think like that anymore. Everyone's pretty much done. Our whole salvation was the prison. That's over with.
Yeah.
We're all that's left.
And I do like, with you having Maggie and Sasha and that stuff, and the drunk, I loved it when he's like, well, Sasha, you said we can't split up. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go for it,
Like,
yeah. This is being
Absolutely.
patched up.
and I thought that was good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Something I brought up to B-Man that I guess I'm not trying to be picky. I just wanted to point out, I guess, some inconsistency. Something I thought was weird. In the very beginning when Daryl and the little sister are together, she says, well, Maggie and Glenn probably escaped from cell block A. And I was like, wouldn't you know that? Because you were on the bus and they were screaming at you to get on the bus. Like, wouldn't you know that they made it out of cell block A? It just seemed like a weird...
Well, I didn't think Beth made it onto the bus.
Who?
The little sister?
little sister?
No, she
Well,
didn't.
sister,
She
Maggie
didn't.
went.
But
looking for
I
him.
thought
But
she
she
saw
saw them.
Glenn and Maggie on there, and then Maggie gets off because they're looking for.
Because I don't think
the
they
little
ever
girl.
show
Right, the way they said it,
Glenn
'cause
getting
at-
off.
Well, here's the other thing. Like, they were all watching Herschel get his head cut off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Too.
And that
Yeah.
that is the fact that they were. I don't get when they made the reference getting out of cell block A. I think she may have just been referring to the prison. That's
Oh,
the only
okay.
way it makes
Yeah.
sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
as because that was their home, cell block
Right.
A.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
You know,
too.
versus so. That's the only way it makes sense. That
Yeah.
comment makes sense to me.
I thought it was
Okay.
just weird writing. I don't know if I read
Yeah.
it wrong, but it was.
Now we were talking about inconsistencies, and again, I'm not harping on this episode because I really enjoyed it a lot. I really did a lot. But two things I'm confused on, which is on an inconsistency part. First one being Glenn wakes up on a destroyed area, which we
Bridge.
saw. Yeah, the
That didn't
destroyed
make
bridge.
no sense.
Well, agreed, but because
me.
but I want to say, and again, maybe I need to rewatch the old episode, but I really remember him on the bus, and I know he explains in that episode. No, I got off the bus to look for Maggie, but he passed out through all the confusion on the bridge, having enough sense to lock the door, and then wakes up and goes, "Wait, they're all gone. Where did Maggie go? It's been that long." To go in and get refurbished with
Well-
a riot gear and everything else.
Here's the inconsistency. All right, so he goes off looking,
Mhm.
and
But do we
and
see
he
him
goes
go
into
off
the
looking
prison.
in the old episode?
Well,
No.
we do see him screaming Maggie, Maggie, and getting
Getting
off the bus.
Yeah. I
Oh,
remember
All
that
right,
part. I remember
okay.
we
that
see
part.
him getting off the bus,
Okay.
but the timing is deliberately confused.
Yeah.
Because the only way it makes sense if he went looking and then the tank fired another shot.
Exactly, because the bridge is
And,
gone.
yeah, that's the only way it makes sense.
Yeah.
Or else he just Wonder Woman, Superman flew, jump, whatever,
Yeah.
onto this.
Kung fu
But
Now-
Let's not forget that season finale was pretty random, so there was a lot of
Right,
stuff
right.
going on. so
I mean,
you
it
wouldn't
really
even
was
know
hard to keep track
was
of what.
going on.
Because
Yeah, really.
you the way they do their flashbacks sometimes, you can't tell if it's continuation or
Yeah,
flashbacks.
definitely.
Yeah.
Just because they jump to a different character.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
That's true.
There's no telling when Daryl actually took out that tank and when they got off.
bus.
Who
The
got
bus
off? Yeah,
went on,
exactly.
yeah, fair
yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
Another part I'm talking about for inconsistency that I was confused on. This is the second part of that. The sister that's sitting there all huddled up, and she's like, "He cut his head off with a sword," and then she runs away. She doesn't run towards the prison. She runs towards the field. At least that's what I
kinda looked
remember.
like, yeah.
Right in the last episode, and then when Glenn sees her, she's just sitting there, zombie stared off in the garden, and he's like, we need to wake up. You need to come with me. We need to do this together because I need you. And that's when they go forward. Now,
Well-
am I confused on that? Or
Now, she was behind enemy lines outside the prison, and things went crazy. So to me, it made sense that she could have ran, and she wanted away from them. The only other place she could have ran for
towards the
shelter
prison.
is to lock herself in something.
fair enough.
So I could see in the chaos, she comes around, eventually locks herself in there, realizes that she's pretty much fucked, and just sits
Doesn't
there and
shoot a
goes,
shot,
yeah.
fair enough.
I mean, I honestly,
That seems legit.
it was full. She didn't want to shoot anything, whatever. Okay, I get that. I thought it would have been more powerful had there been only one bullet left.
Yeah.
She
'Cause
was
she was saving it for
contemplating it,
herself.
yeah.
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 That's why she was staring just off into space,
But
waiting for the moment.
I mean, it being
That makes
full, it did point out Glenn's like, you didn't fire a shot,
It,
so
did,
you
it
weren't
showed some
part.
trust. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Definitely.
so you weren't part of this,
Mhm.
yeah.
And she even says it too. I love how she's like, she told us that you guys were bad people. Like,
And I know that now
and
that
I
you're
know,
not.
yeah, and I thought that was great.
Yeah, that is
Uh,
I like how she
that's-
told the story about Herschel dying, and Glenn was just like, "What?"
Yeah,
What do you
that
mean?
too. Glenn had no idea because he was
Yeah,
sick
that
the
is
whole
true.
time.
Yeah.
Another thing, and I know, and I'll shoot this over to B-Man because we talked a little bit about it.
What was up?
The baby scene.
Yeah,
I didn't-
The baby's alive.
Yeah, and
So,
I said this last time. I didn't think they'd bring Carol back,
Mhm.
but I knew the baby was going to be back.
yeah,
And I was
I did
right about
too.
the baby. Carol, I was like, wow, okay, that's
'Cause
I was
awesome.
The
pretty
thing-
sure we'd see Carol. I just didn't think it'd be this
So
soon.
I'm
soon.
with you. I'm
yeah,
with you
that's
on
true.
that. Like I thought we
could have
would.
dragged that out a little
Exactly.
bit longer,
Exactly.
for sure.
I was expecting Daryl to Daryl to find her and them to cross paths, and then Rick and Daryl to hook up and go, hey, Carol just told me some shit.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
Well, the
But
baby returning, I was like, well, that makes sense because really, it would have been a lot more messier in that little baby carriage for sure if it was a case of a zombie attack. But who knows really how that all that blood got in there.
Yeah.
But and the fact that the baby's still alive, it's okay. But we all know that the baby's not supposed to be alive right now.
right.
And I think it does add like a really good effect, like the fact that it's crying its eyes out, and like Tyrese is
and
like,
that scene-
please, and like there's zombies around. I love it. And
well, they use that to show just how crazy that little Lizzie girl
Oh
is.
yeah, I was just about to say that because
Yeah,
she
you
almost
see it in
kills
her
she
eyes.
almost kills the little girl
Talk-
by holding her mouth. She's like, "No, this girl's you got to stop." And you're
Talk
like, oh,
about,
wow.
Well,
like,
at
one of the
some
most
point,
uncomfortable
it
scenes.
stops.
Crazy.
It stops. The baby stops crying. It's no longer about keeping the baby quiet.
yeah,
Yeah,
She's debating on whether or not killing it.
yeah,
yeah.
That
And her
kid
sister's
is
back to
gonna
her and
kill
she can't see it.
somebody.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's a little
definitely.
rough.
That was intense.
Well, what happened to the other little girl? Because there were 3 that were hanging out and had the baby at
Well,
the
there
prison.
was there was a 4 set. It was the 2 sisters, the 2 blonde sisters, a little girl and a little boy.
I don't remember a little boy. I
There's
just
a
remember
little
the
boy.
3 girls.
But and in the last
maybe they
episode,
got
the
on the
little
boat-
the little
the
girl and
bus.
the little boy freak out because the main sister shoots that one thing, and
Right.
the other sister goes, "I'm out," and the other 2 kids go, "Yep," whoop, and they're gone.
Yeah.
I do remember that in the last scene. There was
Okay.
2 other sets, but we haven't seen those kids. So
There's no telling where they're
Yeah.
at or if they already got bit.
yeah, because they didn't make it on the bus.
No,
They didn't make it on the bus because the bus took off.
Yeah,
So I'm interested to see if anybody survived from the bus. Now it showed a lot of zombies, but I mean,
It did
was that
stop.
a bus?
Yeah.
A bus load of zombies?
Mhm.
There could have
Yeah.
been one. I mean, and I don't know about you, moving car or not. I see a zombie break out especially after living with it for however many months or whatever.
Definitely.
I'm jumping out of an emergency window, front door, whatever.
I
you
get
know.
go out.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Plus
And
the number of
admittedly-
zombies they killed that are out of the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Even the one that's holed up right at the front door where she opens it and pushes it out and she starts like you think she's crying but then you realize like she's laughing because it wasn't Glenn. Like that one
I
zombie
already
had the
knew it
hair of
wasn't
like
Glenn.
Glenn. Well,
Because
I
they
mean
kind of
they
spoiled it during that trailer for the
Exactly.
next episode.
We're just
So
it's
laying
kinda
down.
like-
Yeah.
yeah,
you
they
know,
did
But see,
Glenn's
that's
alive,
one of the things
but-
that bugs me. I actually sometimes try not to watch those.
Yeah.
You
know,
can't
coming
help
up.
it. You kind of want
Right,
to look
right.
at it and know what's going to
so-
happen.
So that would have been a much more powerful scene
If
had
they
you
not
not known.
seen it.
Yeah.
that
Or if
Glenn
they
was
didn't
coming.
show it at all, better
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah. And of course, they put out little talks every once in a while.
Yeah.
A little press conference, whatever.
Yeah.
They said Carol fans are going to be real happy soon.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. They did that. Like last week, right before this episode
Oh,
came
yeah.
in.
Yeah, they
so like,
posted. They
Oh,
posted.
then
yeah.
it's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, she's definitely coming back sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Uh,
This soon, though, is no.
yeah.
don't
Another
think
thing
so.
that I want to hit on really quickly because we're
Okay.
talking about the different segments and we've talked about the Carol and Tyrese segment and we've talked about the Maggie and the Glenn segment and then the Glenn and the sister segment. But the Daryl and the sister,
Beth?
Maggie's sister,
Beth,
Beth, thank
yeah.
you. That's a great scene and a moment for me personally. And the reason being is because you still have Daryl being himself and she doesn't check him for it. She's usually quick to say what's on her mind, and she talks about having hope, and he goes, that didn't get your father anywhere. And it's still a touchy subject because it literally just happened. And she goes and just looks at him, and he knows he did wrong, but he doesn't apologize, and she doesn't breach the subject, and they continue on. To me, that was pretty powerful.
Pretty
know,
damn
because-
Well,
powerful.
this
you're right.
character has decided she's going to live.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know,
Yep.
Mhm.
she started to commit suicide and realized
She's
that she
evolved.
actually wanted to
She's
live.
changed.
Yeah.
And that's anybody who's been through any kind of addiction or anything like can tell you that the whole hitting rock bottom.
Definitely.
And professionals will tell you got to hit rock bottom. So this character has hit rock bottom,
Mm-hmm.
and so now she's getting stronger. She's becoming a more powerful character in the show.
Definitely.
Uh,
Something big that I was again, just kind of poking fun at is like, why is everybody crying?
I know, right? Me and Matt was
Everybody is
talking about
crying
that.
their
and
eyes out.
It
Like,
doesn't make sense because they've been through this junk over and over and over again throughout the seasons, and we're like,
and I
Come on
understand
now.
that they lost their home, but again, B-Man kind of said it like, they lost the farm, their mother got killed. Like, everyone's
Yeah,
lost somebody,
definitely.
and it just seems, I think it's kind of ridiculous on a show standpoint when everyone is pretty much on their same cycle where they're all crying at the same time. They would have broke it up like somebody had a nervous breakdown. A few episodes later, somebody's having a nervous breakdown, but it seems like they cut to each group and everyone's like, I'm like,
even
Yeah.
what are
Daryl's
you
like
doing?
that, and I'm like, oh my god,
Yeah.
Daryl's doing this now?
Why's
Come
everybody
on now.
crying?
Well,
Yeah, chill, man.
it makes sense that Beth would cry a little.
Yeah,
you
it
know,
would. It
because
makes
she's supposed
sense.
to be a 16-year-old girl. You
Yeah,
know,
the dad
okay.
just
Yeah.
got his head cut off.
Yeah.
It makes
I
sense
mean,
that the other
yeah.
little
And,
sister
you know,
would cry or
yeah,
get
I mean,
scared. Yeah.
So, and
With
then,
some
you know, and I
characters you
can
can
see
see it.
Maggie being upset and worried, you know. I mean, so it does make sense that these characters are crying.
Yeah.
But yes, it did make it seem like a whiny episode.
Oh,
where they
yeah,
were
all at the
crying.
same time.
For sure.
So.
Now, one more thing. The ending. Our special guest that
Oh, the
showed
three-
up at the very end of the episode.
The three characters from the comic book.
Definitely.
Yeah, I thought they nailed it. They look,
Oh, the guy-
honestly, it looks
Almost
Uh,
identical. Almost.
yeah, I mean,
like the guy
the
with the crew
outfits
cut.
are in it,
and
you know, yeah.
He could be a little better, but
and those three
Rosa
had
and the other
such an
guy.
interesting dynamic in the comic book.
Yeah.
They could easily take them separately and replicate that dynamic without it being affected by all the other stuff they've changed.
Yeah.
So if they are going to steal something directly from the comic book, that's a very good thing to do. Although it's one of those things, I don't know. That's a little. Some parts of it got a little intense or a little creepy for public or cable TV. Basic cable.
Right.
I know
But
what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
coming up in the comic book. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
yeah, they definitely they played down some things with Michonne's storyline that they touched on, but Michonne didn't go through everything that she went through in the comic book. But
Yeah.
there's no way she could have.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I will say this, and I've mentioned this. As far as the comics, this is where I stopped reading. I wanted to read more. It's just I'm going strictly by the show now, and I like the fact that the three characters at the end show up. The only thing I didn't really care for was the on-screen action pose. We're here,
Cliche.
we're here, everybody.
Right,
I was like,
but-
what?
I mean-
you got a mouth
No,
on
but
you. What
here's
else
the-
you got?
here's the thing. That action pose is the pose they're in the
That's
comic
true.
Right,
book.
right.
is
That's
true.
like they're dead on
Yeah.
replicating
It felt
a
so
frame
cheesy, though.
of the comic.
Yeah,
right
but
there.
it's cheesy, but it's cheesy, yes, to a degree, because we're trying to not go. We're trying to make it its own show and not about the comic book.
Yeah.
But there are moments, like you were saying, because there were some
Doesn't
great
translate.
shots. It's not even about it translating. They're doing that for us. They're doing it for the fans who've read the comic
Makes
books that love it so much. They're going, hey, we know it's our own entity with having the show, but guess what? Here's some stuff for you because it's pretty much straight out the comic. Love you. You know what I mean? I think
not?
that's why they're doing that.
I understand.
And I do understand in
understand.
certain
Service.
aspects
yeah,
it may
no,
be cheesy,
and it
but
was so that pose was just
Yeah.
a hint of fan service.
yeah,
And like the Tyrese having a hammer.
I love
is
that.
I mean,
do too. I
that's
love
that's
I
fan
do
service. Because hey, if you've read the comic book, Tyrese has been dead for a while now.
oh yeah.
But that hammer,
He gets dead at the he gets dead at the getting of the prison.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But of course, if you stopped reading the comic books at this point, you don't get to see Dale go out like a badass.
You really
I
don't.
know.
Because that happens like a year after this shit.
And he's
in
my
the comic
favorite.
book.
Truthfully, in the comic, he was one of my favorite characters.
And his hat lives on.
Yep.
Like his hat it's still in the comic
Yep.
book.
It really is.
Nice.
Yep.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah,
Yep.
so-
But yeah,
Oh.
it's going to be interesting to see somebody who's
Yeah.
read the comics and enjoys them,
I'm
and seeing the
sure-
show
I'm
and now
very-
not knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
it's you really like A buddy of mine watched the show, customer, and he started like at 118. And I'm like,
Okay.
you're really doing yourself a disservice. He's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I didn't know what was going on or nothing. I know what's going on now. I'm like, no,
It's rough.
you can't base the show and then have that set up because, you know, they've already killed off like half the characters that are in those books.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know, I mean,
So
Exactly.
don't even worry about it.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, I had to convince him. No, go back from
Start,
number
yeah,
one.
start.
Yeah.
Read it. It's amazing.
Yep,
Uh,
it is.
All right, guys. Rating.
you know, honestly, I would say about a 7.
7.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd
out
give
of
it.
10.
Yeah, I'd give it a 7. You know, almost leaning towards an 8 because again, I think that's how you should have came back to the show off of a break. But yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with Matt on this. Actually, it's a 7 to 8. Like it's almost an 8 for me. If they would have done a few things differently to maybe explain, like we had talked about throughout this, then I would have given it an 8. But it's a solid 7. Solid 7.
Well, I guess I'm gonna give it a 7 because
Nice.
obviously
It's all across the board.
It's pretty good. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, after picking up from the last episode, I mean, you know, can't get me any better.
You know, minor complaints we had mentioned earlier. We went into this in more detail in the podcast. There were things that they just didn't have. They didn't have bug out bags and stuff like that, and all these things that people really would have had.
Well, and let me ask this too:
Oh, I
like,
just thought about this.
what do you guys? Do you think the show's gonna last as long until the books wrap up, or how long do you see the show going on?
Honestly, as long as it'll get ratings.
Right.
And honestly,
I don't
I'll
see
probably
it going around for a
Watching it is
while.
obviously gonna stay on TV.
I mean, you know,
Yeah,
we
we're
have
on
a
season
sequel.
3
Go,
right now,
or,
right? With
No, we're on
mid-season
season
break?
4.
Four.
Four.
With
We're on
mid-season
season
breaks.
4, and
So,
we have
yeah.
a spin-off starting next year.
Wait, with
So-
what?
It'll be West Coast. Same world, West Coast spin-off.
awesome.
Wow.
Oh,
okay.
that's awesome.
All right.
West Coast
Oh, that's
spin-off
awesome.
starting out in 2015.
That's great.
And this, so it'll be season 5. And what's probably going to happen is there's going to be a midsummer break, or like when one's on break, the other will probably
Yeah,
pick
yeah,
up.
yeah.
Right.
That's probably how they'll do it. And if they do it like that, it'll take off really well.
Yeah, because
If they put them competing to each other, if it's like one right after another, it might confuse people. East Coast for an hour, West Coast for an hour might
Yeah.
throw some people off.
Yeah.
But if they go one season and then they'll keep them constantly hooked on zombies.
Yep.
They ain't never gonna forget.
Yep.
Ratings.
Yeah. Exactly what's gonna happen.
Ratings.
Yeah. Yep.
Kirkman won royalty check.
Science
So true. Oh, whatever. It's not getting.
But yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what
I
happens.
can't wait.
All right.
Cool. Well,
All right. Well, and every famous redneck's last words. I think I can make it.